I'm an activist. Not only an activist, I'm also a placemaker. I traveled a few thousand miles to tell you the story today. 10 years later, I'm indeed the president of an NGO, and I'm also a director of a new experimental form of education where we try to link young people with urban topics. But first, I'm going to take you back 10 years to 2012 to a place which is quite far from here. But first, I will tell you a bit about the content today. We will focus on Brussels. What is Brussels and what's the problem? Then I will show you how you can actually do something. How can you make a change with a disobedient sandwich? I know it sounds kind of cryptic, but the photos will show you more. Then my main focus will be on the Act 2, which could seem as a bit more of a smaller project, but it's actually one of, I think, the good examples of how real grassroots movements can work. And then the last, if we still have time, I will tell you a bit more about urban foxes and why we went into the city. So let's focus on Brussels. We're a very small country, which is called Belgium. Pretty complex as well. I was born in Hoegaarden, which you might know from the famous beer. It's only 40 kilometers from Brussels, but it's very differently on an urban scale. Let's say that Brussels is really a metropolis and Hoegaarden is a small village. This is just Brussels. As you can see, it's a very, very complex situation with 19 different municipalities. All of them have different mayors, policy makers. They each have their own alderman for mobility, alderman for urbanism. So as you can see, this is kind of a scenario for chaos. Brussels is also one of the most cosmopolitan cities. It's the second most cosmopolitan city in the world after Dubai. And as you can see on the map, there is a huge part of segregation. People tend to live in, let's say, they kind of stick in their neighborhood. Turkish people live in Turkish neighborhoods, etc. And I would like you to focus maybe on the blue side, which is also the richer side with more public space and a very big forest. The red and the orange are kind of more precarious neighborhoods with an absolute lack of public space. If I show you this list, is there anything that strikes you? The one that are bold are the municipalities in Brussels. Is there anything that could bring these cities, which are very diverse, together? Is there anyone who would like to give it a go? What could be the correlation between Manila, Mumbai, Saint-Just, the Node, and Saint-Gilles and Cairo? Any guesses? No? These are some of the cities that are in the top 50 of most dense populated cities in the world. So Brussels has 4 of them in top 50, which will show us later why this is so precarious. This is Brussels. We also call it the Pentagon. And you can see the Pentagon in the center, which is actually a remainder of the old medieval walls. And if you look closely, you can see some kind of artery running from north to south. And this is what will be the focus of my first part of the presentation. So let's go back even before 2012. Let's go to 1958, the World Expo in Brussels and the building of the famous Atomium. And on the right, we see, let's say, the personification of the public and private cooperation in one person. This is the mayor of Brussels, but he is also, or he was also, the director of a concrete factory. So he was responsible for building a lot of car infrastructure and a lot of tunnels, which are now decaying. This is how Brussels in the 1950s and 60s looked like, with the prettiest car park in the world on the Grand Place, which thankfully is not the case anymore. And we also have a very big viaduct, which has now been transported to Thailand, also luckily. Now, you can also guess that Brussels is very congested, very polluted, and it was actually in 2013 the most congested city in the world, according to Forbes. This, of course, has huge consequences for the conditions of life. And what you can see here is not only a map of streets, but also a map of the air pollution. And as you can see, the ring which goes around the Pentagon is extremely polluted. And let's say that most of the precarious neighborhoods are laying around the ring road. We all know, of course, the consequences of this very bad air quality, which leads to 1 out of 3 young people having respiratory diseases in Belgium. So by the time, unfortunately, when our presentation is over, there have been several people that have been died because of the air pollution in Belgium. Every year, 10,000 people per year die because of the air pollution. So this made me kind of think about these things, and then the new chapter arrived, which is called Picnic the Streets. I also call it Civil Disobedience Sandwiches. For that, I need to take you to this person, Philippe van Parijs, who is a philosopher in Brussels, but also in Oxford. And he published, in a very smart way, an article asking for more public space in Brussels. So if we go back to this person, he published an open letter in 3 major Brussels newspapers, one in French, Dutch, and English. And he asked the young generation to take a stand to take the public space. And he called for action, and he said, why don't we go and picnic on this very busy urban boulevard, and let's reclaim this public space, because it's going way too slow. The focus will be on the Ansbach, which you can see there with, let's say, 4 car lanes driving through the heart of Brussels. It's actually called Place de la Bourse, so the square of the stock exchange, which is not an actual square, as you can see. So he was quite smart by publishing this, because he said he was getting furious, and things are going way too slow in Brussels. And he also, in his last sentence in the article, he said, I would like the young Facebook generation to take things out of my hand and to go on the streets. So what I do, I made a very small private Facebook group for 8 friends. What I didn't know was that one of my friends was going to publish this on a website and a newspaper. So when I opened my computer again after a meeting, I had over 2,000 requests of people wanting to join in this group. So everything exploded, and what I'm talking about now is a process of several years, but between the actual making the Facebook group to the actual picnic was, I think, 10 days. So we had to think about an imaginary. I think activism, placemaking is about creating imaginaries. And the imaginary that was in place in Brussels was that one of an economical city, where people come with the car, they work, and they go back to their detached houses with their garden. We had to create an imaginary, which is quite difficult. So we had to go from this road to making people dream this could be possible. And a lot of people, they couldn't believe it. So we tried to make an image that could, let's say, show what we wanted. More public space, but also a bit of activism, a bit of cheekiness, boldness. And we did our first picnic, 10 June 2012, and it was a huge success. There were a lot of people. There were really a lot of people. There were 2,000 people taking the streets disobediently, bringing their sandwiches, taking the street, blocking the cars, and that's what we did for several years, every Sunday, until we got into Chinese newspapers, Al Jazeera, Wall Street Journal, and that is, for me, where my urban quests started. We expanded, we started doing tactile urbanism before the term already existed. We made a pétanque, which was mobile. After a few years, the mayor succumbed to our activism, and he decided to make a test case. So he made a pilot by making the Ansbach Boulevard car-free every Sunday, and afterwards he made the summer months car-free. So then there was a big plan, because the test case really worked. People were using the space, and they said, we're going to refurbish, we're going to make a very nice pedestrian boulevard. And this is how it looks like now. Thank God. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looks now. So all thanks to people, thanks to activism. It still makes me very proud every day when I go to work to do this. So this was a major accomplishment in the center of Brussels, the center of Europe. But now I want to take you to another place, because people were sending us emails and asking us, can you also come and picnic in our street? Because we need the space, we need the green air. And we actually went to Molenbeek, which is famous for some not so good things, but I think now it's also becoming famous for a park. This is Porte de Ninove, which means the door to Ninove. As I told you before, Brussels was a medieval city with gates, and this is a gate with a lot of traffic. In that time, cars and trams, but people coming from Flanders to Brussels to have an economical activity. This is how the space around Porte de Ninove looked like in 1952. So you could say pretty good. In the back you see some of the factories. There was a brewery. There were also some other forms of industrial activity. And this is how the place looked like 5 years ago. You could call it, I would call it a dystopian urban place or an urban wasteland. We knew that it was quite difficult to have the same amount of people as in the center of Brussels. So we thought, let's see what we can do. And here you see another Google image from 2011. Also for cyclists and pedestrians, it was a horrific place. As you can see, it's also on the list of most populated places, most densely populated place in the world. And I have another riddle for you. What do you think this could be? Half a square meter. Any guesses? No? Walking way? It's actually the amount of public space that one person has in Molenbeek. So it's one of the lowest in the world. So every person has half a meter of public space. This made us to also succumb to this call to do something there. So we also announced a big picnic. There were, again, quite some people, not as much as in the center. So we thought, let's try another way. Let's try to make, maybe, if we don't have the numbers, let's try to make, let's not give up and focus on something that is already there. And we focused on this small triangle of green, which was also used a lot for littering, a lot of people leaving their couches. This is a common phenomenon in Brussels, people just leaving their couch somewhere on the street. We got like a heritage from a school who had used this kind of grass to also do a street picnic, and they said, do you want to use it? And we thought, okay, let's try to do something there. And we started planting grass. And we had some grass left over, so we thought, let's just grass the whole concrete. And we thought we can also make it a bit safer. That's when we thought of the term of traffic gardening. And that's actually the photo where we had the idea of also creating an image, a new image for this neighborhood. Like, why not do something and make people believe this could be a greener space? And so we also made a flyer. We took some simulations from Berlin Tempelhof, and we glued it on Molenbeek. We also thought of a logo. Let's call it Canal Park, because the canal is running next to it. We also did something I would like to maybe show you today, like some ways to destabilize policymakers if things are not getting through, because I think you need to really know that Brussels is not Helsinki, neither Copenhagen or Amsterdam. Policymakers just don't listen to citizens. So we had to make them listen. And what we made there was our own signpost announcing the works for an actual park. So we funded it ourselves, we ran around with the head, and we made a signpost announcing a new park. And the funny part of this was that one of the mayors called the other mayor saying, why didn't you warn me about this? I don't know anything. I never know about any of those things. I mean, you're building a park and we don't know. And as you can see, the first phase, les riverains, or the omwonenden, the people, the inhabitants, will take the first steps. Now you can call it placemaking, but we just did something with the people. We started with young people to try to create from this small triangle a nicer place. We had Mohammed, who was a retired gardener, taking these young people under his wings, showing them how to do some gardening. We also had some 3 young kids, teenagers, joining in. And then we thought, why not do some kind of crowdfunding? What if people could buy some grass, buy some flowers, buy some trees, and be kind of an ambassador for these things? And I think we managed to get 2,000 or 3,000 euros. We started planting flowers, planting trees with the neighborhood, keeping the park clean because it was often still being used as a dump. We also got some more generous donations that enabled us to build these slides and these small climbing walls. No parking. We also activated by reaching out to the local community. People were doing flea markets. So slowly people were using it. And I think you all know the famous quote saying, if you build it, they will come. Well, we activated and they came. And people started using this space as an actual hangout. They started to linger, start to enjoy. We also watched the World Cup there on a mobile bike. And young people started to use this kind of, what we thought was very humble, but schools would come to use this space. People would climb, people having teas, even neighborhood committees. And then again, we made it like unexpectedly, the Brussels region announced that we were going to build an actual park. So this was within the time frame, I think, of 3 years. We managed to push 3 big Brussels projects through the throat of some of our nice policymakers. And now this is how it looks like. A nice park, which is going to be seen as an evolution. Every year, together with the local inhabitants, people will say what they would like to have there. And every year, the park will evolve into something hopefully nicer. So this is how it was, I mean, how it is now. And before we only had this small triangle on the left. Even nature returned. And now what happens also with if you do things, if you plant seeds, you also make other people dream. And this is a collective in Brussels, which is called Pool is Cool. And they're advocating for swimmable open air swimming pools. And they're also dreaming of a swimming pool next to the park and next to the canal. And for me, I mean, we never had one thank you from any policymakers. But for me, when I pass by our little triangle and I see this in spring, then I'm a happy man. I'm a happy activist. I'm a happy placemaker. So for me, this is more than enough. If I see these poppies going through, yeah. And then, yeah, you go from activists and you want to do something proactive. You start a small nonprofit. You grow. You go from tactile urbanism, a mobile pétanque, to actually reclaim space from parking and to give it back to the people and the kids, to mobile furniture, to European training courses, what we're now focusing on, bringing youth into urban themes. I'm also, as Katia said, linked to Medela Prado and Urban Lab Torino, and we're planning to do some nice things. It will also come back in the Broedplaats, and we're also thinking about a Broedplaats. I call it a dream factory for people with urban dreams, and we will focus on our young people. So here are a few of our interventions that we did in other places. It's just a very short summary of what we do and what we did. So maybe some notes to policymakers to wrap up. I would say use the collective intelligence you have of the people and put them to good use and find ways to valorize them. These people are coming after work. These people are coming with their own energy. Make it fun for them. And not only ask what the city can do for them, but also what they want to do for the city. And I made this small overview. Like, for me, it has to be fun. Participation or activism always has to be fun. You also have to experiment because you don't know. And I think it's very important also to learn from each other. We're never a teacher and never a learner. We're always both. And I think if you change something, make sure it's an improvement. Try to tap into the creativity and collaboration with people. And always, and I think this is for us the most important thing in our NGO, always try to include everyone. If you don't have colored people, if you don't have kids, if you don't have elderly people, you're not doing it right. Find something that you share with them. Food, music, culture, fun. I think everybody likes fun. And that's it for me. I had a few other things, but maybe another time or tomorrow. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I hope you were able to take something out of it. Thank you.